on the screen. Uh, Once again, I welcome all of you. Also, I welcome Dr. Raghu Chatanatudi, Professor Department of Physics, to chair the session. Please, sir.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to thank Dr. Sujit, HOD of Chemistry, for having given me this wonderful opportunity to chair over this session of computational chemistry in the first of the webinar series arranged by the Department of Chemistry. And I would also like to congratulate the Department of Chemistry and their HOD for having come up with this very nice series of webinars. I suppose there will be a continual series of webinars this semester, which will be very useful for not only our students, but also several students from all over Calicut and Kerala. And this is one of the ways that we are trying to address the challenge posed by our very peculiar situation of COVID pandemic. And I think it's a laudable effort from the Department of Chemistry. My task today is to chair this session and also introduce Parameshwaran, who is a great friend and a very close collaborator. If not in work, in a lot of various other ways, we are involved in a lot of computational activities, setting up facilities for the users of NIT Calicut. I know him for quite some time now, ever since he joined this institute. Previous to that, Parameshwaran he did his PhD from University of Hyderabad, but he was also at the Indian Institute of Science. He worked with with well-known computational chemist, Professor E.D. Jemis. He was a research associate in IASC for some time, and later on he went for a postdoc to Marburg in Germany. He was a Humboldt Fellow there, and he followed that up with a short stay in Kyoto University before joining NIT Calicut. So his main research interests are in bonding and structure and computation of electronic structure and properties of molecules, and the possibility of designing or tailoring molecules to suit applications which are range of starting from all kinds of, even he's interested in materials also, which makes people in physics interact with him quite a bit. So there's a lot of interaction between the physics materials community and Dr. Parameshwaran. So he has a number of research publications as of today, and he has a lot of distinctions. He has been awarded the Alexander Humboldt von Humboldt Fellowship, also the JSPS Fellow. He was also the DAD Exchange, DST DAD Exchange Fellow previously, and he has been he has a very successful research group here in NIT Calicut with a lot of research facilities. And so today he's going to talk, I think, about how computation comes up from very basics of quantum mechanics. I hope this session will be very productive for faculty, research students, as well as young graduate and undergraduate students who are with us. Take over.
Okay. Yes. Am I audible?
You are, but I don't know about all others.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
yes,
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 you are
yes.
audible.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you,
yes,
thank
sir.
you. First of all, I thank you, Professor Raghu, for your quite long and kind introduction. It's quite long. And first, I would like to
It's my
thank.
pleasure.
Yeah.
It is my pleasure, I said.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, I thank our HOD, Dr. Sujit, for giving me this opportunity to present the first session of the webinar series. So thank you. Without much delay, let me go to my presentation. What I understood that there are quite number of participants. Now I think total number of participants is 142 or so, and out of which I'm sure that so many people are from outside NIT Calicut. Okay, let me share my slide. Okay.
Param, can I just interrupt for one moment?
Yes.
Yeah, if participants have any questions, you can either type it in the box there, so that or just keep it till the end, so that the talk goes on smoothly. If you have any questions in between, please type it in the text box, comments box. Thank you.
I hope all of you are seeing the presentation window, right?
Yes, 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 we can see.
Okay. So as the first session, the title is Computation Chemistry, What and How. So in this slide, you can see there are some breathing mode of benzene, some electrostatic potential map, and some spectral data. So by my basic idea about the talk is, what is the computation chemistry? How one can do computation chemistry? That is my objective of today's talk. Right. So I normally used to ask several questions during my presentation. Since it's a webinar, it's very difficult to do that. So still, I'm putting question myself. By seeing this slide, what normally we feel? I used to ask these questions to several people during my presentation. Almost all people said to me that this is a chemistry lab. So, but that answer is certainly does not make me happy. Yeah, that answer is correct. I say it's partially correct. I would prefer to say that this is a experimental chemistry lab. So if I say this is an experimental chemistry lab, automatically, so what else? What else we can do? That is what I'm going to discuss. That is what called a computational chemistry. So our traditional viewpoint that the chemistry means an experimental science. Everything we have to do work in the lab by mixing chemicals and doing spending quite long time in the getting a smell of different type of chemicals. But nowadays, you can do quite a lot of chemistry without doing any experimental work or without even touching any chemicals. So that is what we call as a, not all chemists wear white coats. These white coats indicate the symbolic representation of experimentalist. That means we can do a lot of chemistry in a cyberspace. That means we can do a lot of chemistry using computer. So if I say, okay, we can do a lot of things with the computer. So one should know what are the basic behind that, right? How one can do chemistry without using any chemicals. So that's the first objective, right? So I just want to introduce what the basics of chemistry by this slide. In this slide, I'm going to show about a newspaper report which came in one of the newspaper that is named Economist, right? In that, the news came after the announcement of a Nobel Prize in 1998. This is true, right? Whenever some awards are announced, next day in the newspaper, there will be some report about that award. Similarly, in this newspaper, the newspaper name is Economist, there was a newspaper report about the Nobel Prize in 1998. Now, what they are saying that it has given to two people. One is called Walter Kohn, and other is John Pople. They got Nobel Prize because they said they have developed some computational methods, right? Because of that, they developed some computational method by using quantum theory. They got a Nobel Prize. Okay, this news report is done by a small reporter. He doesn't have much idea about these things, but whatever he understood, read from the report of Nobel Prize Committee, they have written that. So go to the next paragraph. In the real world, this could eventually mean that most chemical experiments are conducted inside the silicon chips instead of glasswares of laboratories. Yeah, so yeah, that's somewhat true. But go to the next line. Turn off that Bunsen burner. It will not be wanted this in 10 years. Okay, this is quite exaggeration, right? We can't do any chemistry without, we can't do proper chemistry without experimental work, but we can do a lot of chemistry without doing any experimental work. That's the indication from that. Yeah, of course, in newspaper, they will exaggerate like anything. So that means they developed some computation method. That is why they got Nobel Prize, right? No, what are that computation method? And what are the basis behind that computation method, right? That one has to understand. So without going to much details, I'm just going to quote some statement said by the Dirac, a famous scientist. This was in 1929 when he was giving a lecture at Caltech. So what he said that the underlying physical laws necessary for mathematical theory of large part of physics and the whole of chemistry are thus completely known. But the difficulty is that how to solve, because these equations are much more complicated. So what is saying that in 1929, there are a lot of theories are developed, a lot of physics theories are developed. By means of that, in principle, we can understand almost all problems of chemistry and majority of physics problems. But problem is that how to solve that mathematical equations derived from that physics laws. That is a bottleneck. So goal of computation chemistry is we have to use our physics laws, right? The corresponding mathematical formalism, right? And solve by means of computer. It's not possible to calculate ourselves. So we need some help from computer. So computer chemistry is a mixture of pure physics laws, right? The mathematical formalism for that. Since we are not able to solve by means of ourselves, we have to ask computer to solve. So computer doesn't know our language. So what we have to do? We have to convert our mathematics to the corresponding programming language where computer can understand. That means we have to do coding for this mathematics. So computer chemistry is mixture of everything. Right? Now, so when he said there is one can use several physics laws, so automatically the question will come, what are those physics laws? which law we have to select or how we have to select, right? So broadly, I'm classifying the entire physics laws for computation chemistry perspective into two groups. One, which developed by Sir Isaac Newton. Second, which developed by Schrodinger. Of course, there are a lot of modification. I'm talking about the basic expression, right? So what is the basic expression for the Newton? F is equal to ma. Force is equal to mass into acceleration, right? But what is the basic equation which Schrodinger developed? Nothing but a Schrodinger equation. So what is called H psi is equal to E psi. So I said the entire physics laws I am going to divide two categories. One developed by the Newton, that is called a classical mechanics. Second one is called a quantum mechanics. If you are going to study about a system, the size is the important factor which is going to decide which physics laws you have to select, which mechanics you are going to select. If size of the object is really, really big, we apply classical mechanics laws to solve that concerned problem. But on the other hand, if the size of the object which you are dealing, like very small, like electron or hydrogen atom, right, or some vibrations, then you can't use our classical mechanics laws. Rather, we have to use quantum mechanics laws, right? So we have to select the physics laws. So we can select the physics law based on the size of the object, right? Suppose if we are going to study about the interaction of benzene molecule, right? The size of the benzene molecule rather really big. This simple interaction in a what's called a glass bowl, how that's going to interact, we can use a classical mechanics laws. Let's suppose if you are going to understand how a nucleophilic or electrophilic substitution reaction is going to happen, maybe SN2 reaction or some electrophilic substitution reaction like bromination reaction, then there involves some motion of electron. There involves the movement of electron, which we have to deal with a very small or minute particle. There we have to use our quantum mechanics laws. So size is the bottleneck to decide which laws you have to select. Right. Now I am going to explain that one a little more elaborately, right? Without using much equation. Right? What are the basic concept? Here I have shown a slide about Mangalyaan. It's called a Mars Orbiter mission. Right? Of course, this is our mission, India's mission. This I have taken from ISRO website because there was a Chandrayaan mission, but somehow that is failed. So if it was fine, I would have taken that picture. So the basic idea is that this is a complete trajectory of Mangalyaan, right? It's launched. Our Mangalyaan launched from the Earth atmosphere on I think November 5th of 2013. It made 7 rising altitude of revolution around the Earth. On 1st December 2013, it started its journey from Earth atmosphere and passed through this green trajectory and reached to the Mars on 24th September 2014. When it was launched from the Earth atmosphere, right, the Mars position was here. When it reached the Mars atmosphere, the Earth position is here. This blue corresponds to the Earth orbit, and this color, this orange color, corresponds to Mars orbit. How do you predict exactly as we predefined way it could reach on 24th September 2014 after several months of travel during the third revolution path around the earth, because the fuel is not banned properly, so the trajectory was not proper. So the scientist could ban sufficient fuel to make the trajectory proper. That everything we could do by sitting in India. How that is possible? What laws may be used there? Right? Here we know how much energy is required to move the object from one position to another position. Right? So we know the position of this object as well as the velocity of this moving body each and every moment of time. In terms of physics, we say that we know the position as well as momentum of this moving body, all this moving body at any moment of time. And also we can calculate in advance, right? If we are going through the space, what will be the speed in which it can go, how much fuel has to burn, etc., etc., etc. Simply, the classical mechanics and its modifications are used for this Mangalyaan mission. The basic idea of this classical mechanics is that we know the position as well as momentum at any moment of time. That means there is a certainty about the position and momentum. This is the basic concept of classical mechanics, right? So when you go for a quantum mechanics, it is certainly different. It is based on probability, right? By this picture, probably I can explain to you what is the probability means. This is one of the famous experiment. It's called a Schrodinger's cat. The basic idea is that we have a black box. In that black box, we are going to keep a cat, live cat. This is the picture corresponding to that. And we are going to close that black box. Black box indicates that nothing indicates that it is covered. We are not able to see what is inside. That's all. Inside that black box, there is a symbol here, right? This symbol indicates that there is a radioactive sample. It's not a symbol for the exhaust fan. Okay. So there is a radioactive sample is there. The radioactive sample release radioactive rays. Right? Once the radioactive rays comes out from this radioactive sample, there is a sensor which is going to detect that radioactive rays. Once the sensor detects this radioactive rays, this machine is going to switch on. This machine is very simple. It is a hammer connected to that this place. That's all. When the machine is on, what will happen? This hammer will go down. The down, there is a round bottom flask. A round bottom flask containing poisonous gas. It is closed around bottom glass. When radioactive rays comes out, sensor is going to detect that. This machine is going to operate. Nothing but the hammer is going down. Definitely is going to hit on the round bottom flask. Flask is going to break. Poisonous gas is going to come out. The cat is going to breathe. What will happen for the cat? Cat is going to die. Right? So this sensor is going to active only when the radioactive rays comes out from the radioactive sample. Probably you have studied in your physical chemistry class or nuclear chemistry classes that radioactive process is a random process. You can't predict exactly when these radioactive rays are coming out. especially when the half-life of the sample is quite high. So this process will happen only if the radioactive rays are comes out. But you don't know when the radioactive rays are coming out. Right? So then I kept the cat. I closed the box. Then I ask you, what is the fate of the cat? Yeah, we can't say. We say that cat may be alive or cat may be dead. Or there is a 50% chance that cat may be alive. There is a 50% chance that this cat may be dead. Right? We can talk the fate of the cat as in terms of probability. If I'm going to represent a function for the fate of cat as a alive, as a psi alive, and the fate of the cat as a dead by another function called as psi dead, what is a total possibility? Total chance is nothing but it's a linear combination of these two chance, these two probability. This is I written here, psi is equal to 1 by root 2 in bracket psi alive plus psi dead. We can't represent in terms of one particular way. We have to talk in terms of both probability, both chance. This is the basis of quantum mechanics. So when the size of the object becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, we can't talk in terms of particle nature. So we have to talk in terms of wave nature. Right? So once we talk in terms of wave nature, we can say exactly where it is localized. We can tell only that it can be there in somewhere in that particular region. Okay, and now I am sure that this is a pandemic time and most of us are sitting in the home. Definitely you have seen quite a lot of movies, right? But I hope some of you have seen some ghost movies, right? So in movie, okay, I'm not believing on ghost, but still I'm going to ask, what is ghost? Or at least in a movie representation, what is ghost? Maybe you have seen the movie like Agashaganga or something, right? Yeah, suppose if you are going to a ghost bungalow, suddenly ghost will come in front of you and make you afraid, right? If you turn back, suddenly it may be standing behind you. You may see that the ghost is passing through the walls, passing through the doors, right? How that's possible? See, don't believe on ghost, right? But for making this concept to understand, I'm just telling this, okay? Because I am even not believing any of this kind, but probably this is a good way one can understand about this probability. We can consider this ghost as a massless object. So it can penetrate through our classically forbidden region. Suppose we are going to pass through our wall. Is it possible? No. For us, that wall is a potential energy wall. We have to use our energy, you have to use our kinetic energy to break that potential energy wall, then only we can cross. But if the size of the object becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, size of we have to talk in terms of not a particle nature, we have to talk in terms of a wave nature. So it can penetrate through our classically forbidden region. That is what called a tunneling. This is one of the property of wave. Right? So all quantum mechanics laws are based on this probability. Because we don't have any certainty about the position of the position. We say that there is a ghost bungalow. Anywhere we can see the ghost anywhere of that bungalow. Similarly, if the size of the object becomes smaller and smaller, we can't say the exact position of the electron. Rather, we say there is a probability, the region in which we can see the electron. That's what so-called orbital, whether s orbital, p orbital, etc. Because we can't exactly localize where is the electron. This is the importance when you are going to use our quantum mechanics laws. We have to use in terms of uncertainty about the position. We can't understand both position as well as momentum at the same time. This is the basics of quantum mechanics laws. So same thing I just represent in terms of another cartoon picture. So in a classical world, that means really object is really big. Suppose if I went to see a lion in a zoo, that means the lion inside a cage. Definitely the lion never can come and catch you. Let's assume that the same thing existing in a quantum world, right? And if you are going to represent in terms of wave, certainly this lion can tunnel through this classically forbidden region and catch you, right? So here there is a certainty, here is an uncertainty. Here talking in terms of here we are talking in terms of probability, right? Right. So this will happen. The quantum mechanics laws we have to apply when size of the object is very small. So we have talked in terms of wave nature. We have talked in terms of probability. Now, how do we when the wave nature is going to start, right? So for that we have to understand about the matter. There is a very famous principle. This is called a de Broglie relationship, saying that there is for any matter there will be a wave associated with that, right? So this is one of the I think one of the latest double slit experiment, right, which can understand which indicates, which shows the duality of a matter wave, that means particle nature as well as wave nature. Okay, this is done by a Hitachi company in 1989. I'll show you that video. Please watch that video. Basically there is an electron source here. It passing through a double slit, and the detector is detecting, and it is showing in the computer screen. Okay, that's the basic experimental setup. Okay, so now let's see what we are seeing.
Now we are looking at the detector plane on the monitor.
They are passing electrons throughout.
These spots indicate individual electrons. Electrons are sent out only occasionally. Therefore, the chance of finding one electron
so
in the microscope
when it's falling on the detector, we can identify the position of each electron.
Since electrons are detected
now
one by one,
they are passing electron for quite long time.
That each electron must
Let's see what happens.
at random on either side of the pi boson, thus creating a uniform distribution without any interference when accumulated. Under such condition, do electrons form a uniform distribution? But look, we begin to see some fringes in the perpendicular direction that looks like interference fringes. Since this experiment lasted for more than 30 minutes, I have sped the movie up. Interference fringes are now clearly visible.
Yes. What you are seeing? We could see the position of each electron where it is falling. When we are passing the electrons more than 30 minutes, there we could see that there are certain position, the number of electrons are more, there are certain positions less. What we got is an interference pattern. That means the most important point is that we could detect, because there is an experiment set in which they could detect the position of each electron exactly. But the total pattern which we got, the path in which you followed, and where it's going to fall are different. Because that means there is a particle, because since you are going to identify each position, that means we could identify the position, means the particle nature is evident. The total pattern indicates that it is a wave nature. So there is a duality. It has a both property, right? That is what I understood from this experiment. Now, if you increase the size of the object, this wavelength will become very, very small. And similarly, that is why there's a famous relationship. It's called a de Broglie relationship. Lambda is equal to h by p. P is nothing but momentum. That's nothing but mass into velocity. If mass is becoming larger and larger, wavelength associated with any matter will be less. Right? So any matter exists in a dual form, right? Or there is a duality is existing, right? So which is predominant, that is going to decide, or for depending upon the problem which we are going to solve, we have to select either physics laws or classical laws or quantum mechanics laws. So this is another cartoon picture, make you feel good. So this is a very nice picture, right? This is nothing to do with the duality of electron, but there is something interesting from this. When you look this image, I think most of the people, all of you are young people, definitely what you see is a quite beautiful young lady. Maybe people like quite old people, they maybe see the same quite old woman. Of course, if you observe thoroughly, you can see both images superimposed in one. Right? Suppose if you think this is an eye, this is a nose, this is a chin, this is an ear. The image looks like a beautiful young lady. However, if you think this is a nose, this is an eye, this is a mouth, and this is a chin, it looks like a quite old woman, right? So if you observe thoroughly, you can see both. That means if you check in the internet, you can see so many of these pictures. What I want to say from here is that dualities are existing in different ways. This duality is of course certainly different from the duality of electron, but from this one can understand that okay, there is a duality, right? Now, so far we discussed about size of the object. Based on that, we can either select classical mechanics laws or quantum mechanics laws. Right? Now, I'm going to put one more parameter, velocity. So I have an object has size and it's moving with a particular velocity. Right? Suppose I'm simply dividing the size of the object into two groups. One is greater than 10 to the power minus 9 meter. Other one is less than 10 to the power minus 9 meter. Is size of the object, this is a rough value, it's not a clear cut boundary. Is size of the object if it's greater than 10 to the power minus 9 meter. Normally we use classical mechanics laws to solve the problem related to that. If size of the object is quite less than 10 to the power minus 9 meter, we normally select quantum mechanics laws. But of course, the 10 to the power minus 9 is not a clear-cut boundary. There is a flexibility. Okay, I'm telling about a rough approximation. Similarly, if I'm going to introduce a velocity of that object, velocity may be close to that of velocity of light, or velocity may be quite less than that of velocity of light. Right? If velocity is quite less than that of velocity of the light, and also the object which you are dealing is really bigger in size, we have to use Newtonian mechanics for solving problem related to that. On the other hand, if the size of the object is really big or greater than that of 10 to the power minus 9 meter, and the velocity is equal to velocity of light, then we can't use Newtonian mechanics to solve problem related to that. Rather, we had used theory developed by Einstein. Similarly, if you go to the size of the object is really smaller than that of 10 to the power minus 9 meter, and the velocity is much smaller than that of velocity of light, we normally use Schrödinger equation to solve the problem related to that. If size of the object is really small and velocity is equal to velocity of light, then we can't use Schrodinger equation. We have to use a modified Schrodinger equation called a Dirac equation to solve problem related to that. So depending on the size and the velocity, we can select one particular laws, one set of laws based on this classifications. Of course, beside when the velocity of the object is close to velocity of light, we say that it's called a relativistic effect will be there. Other one will be non-relativistic. And the top portion is a highly deterministic. We know the position and the momentum accurately at any moment of time. The lower portion we have where we had always talk in terms of probability. So you have to understand which problem you are going to solve. So first you have to select what is the object which you are going to study. First, you understand what is the size of the object. And then second, you have to understand what is the velocity in which it is moving. Based on that, we have to select one of these laws. Suppose you want to study about the movement of 1s electron in uranium atom. I'm talking about 1s electron, right? So it is close to nucleus. Uranium has a very high charge. So the movement of electron will be much higher, close to velocity of light. So we can't use Schrodinger equation to understand the behavior of 1s electron in uranium atom. You have used Dirac equations. Suppose if you want to understand about the movement of a benzene molecule in a tube, or maybe a nanotube, you can simply use Newton's laws. That's enough, right? So based on the problem with your hand, you have to select, right? Now, one more thing which I want to say, that so there is a two classification I said. One is called a classical mechanics laws, other is called a quantum mechanics laws. Normally they are not happy to each other because classical mechanics people doesn't like quantum mechanics people, and the reverse. So that is the first picture indicate that there is somebody is throwing a apple to cat, right? This person who is throwing is a symbolic of classical mechanics, Newton. Other person, Schrodinger cat, right? He's a symbolic representation of quantum mechanics. They are not liking each other. This was the thing till last 1970 or 1980. Right? Then there are several developments happen. Now they are very happy to each other. They are going to collaborate each other. So they are sitting together. What I mean that, even though I said that depending on the size and velocity, we can select